Welcome back. We're going to be talking about some types of different types of prison releases. So the majority of all inmates leaving prison, about 2/3 of them, do so through one of the parole mechanisms. And one of the remaining third, most are given an expiration release, also known as maxing out. An expiration release occurs when an inmate has served the maximum of time on the initial sentence, minus reductions for good time, and is not subjected to community supervision. Another quite rare unconditional release is a pardon, and this is a form of executive clemency. Most states will have a board of pardons, which is affiliated with the parole board, and that makes recommendations to the governor in cases in which it believes a pardon is warranted. Some inmates who qualify for exhibiting good behavior and generally proving that they do not represent a risk to society are allowed to leave prison on a furlough. And a furlough is when you can leave for a certain amount of time, usually between a day and a week. And there usually are reasons why furloughs are taken into consideration when decisions are made. So there are a lot of challenges that exist. In past years, programs that helped inmates make the transition from prison to the outside world would have come under the general heading of rehabilitation. But today, corrections officials and criminologists refer to them as part of the strategy of prisoner reentry. Prisoner reentry is a correction strategy that's designed to prepare inmates for a successful return to the community and to reduce recidivism. Whereas rehab is focused on the individual offender, reentry encompasses the released convict's relationship with society. So there are barriers that exist with reentry. It really does prison really does isolate individuals. So some of the barriers are that they are not required to make day-to-day decisions that characterize a normal existence beyond prison walls. Someone's paying their bills, someone is taking care of all of the things that often you have to learn to take care of when you get out of prison. So depending on the length of incarceration, a released inmate must adjust to an array of economic, technological, and social changes that took place while he or she was behind bars. Housing is definitely difficult to secure, as many private property owners refuse to rent to someone with a criminal record, and federal and state laws restrict public housing options for ex-convicts. The Council of State Governments has tabulated more than 46,000 federal and state restrictions imposed on convicted felons, and about 3/4 of which are employment-related. So, what is the goal of reentry? It really needs to act as a flashlight for convicts by promoting desistance. And this is a general term that's used to describe continued abstinence from offending and reintroduction of offenders into society. In most cases, however, inmates are going to need help. And this is going to be help getting an education, help finding and keeping a job, help freeing themselves from harmful addictions to drugs and alcohol. And corrections officials are in a good position to be able to offer this assistance, and their efforts in doing so really should be the backbone of reentry movements. Most correctional facilities offer life skills classes to inmates, and after release, former inmates often find it difficult to continue with educational programs and counseling as they struggle to readjust to life outside of prison. So corrections officials have several options in helping certain parolees. Usually, low-risk offenders are going to find employment and a place to live during the supervision period. Nearly 1/3 of correctional facilities offer work release programs in which prisoners nearing the end of their sentence are given permission to work at a paid employment within the community. Inmates on work release either return to the correctional facility in the evening, or under certain circumstances, they can live in community residential facilities known as halfway houses. So let's talk about sex offenders a little bit, because there are some differences in release for sex offenders. And despite the beneficial impact of these reentry efforts, one group of wrongdoers has consistently been denied access, and these are those that are convicted of sex crimes. The eventual return of these offenders to society causes such high levels of community anxiety that the criminal justice system has not yet figured out what to do with them. Outraged that a halfway house for sex offenders was operating in their midst, residents of Mesa, Arizona neighborhood posted signs reading, "Sex offenders, felons, and pedophiles," with arrows pointing toward the home. It's a safety issue. And such attitudes like this reflect the widespread belief that convicted sex offenders cannot be cured of their criminality and therefore are destined to continue. According to the Department of Justice, the rearrest rates of rapists, 46%, and those convicted of other forms of sexual assault, 41%, are among the lowest for all offenders. Whatever their recidivism rates, sex offenders are subject to extensive community supervision. They're usually going to be supervised by a parole officer, and they're going to have conditions that they have to follow. This is going to include no contact with children under the age of 18, psychiatric treatment, certain distance from parks and schools, cannot own toys that might lure children, cannot have jobs or participate in activities that involve children, residency restrictions as far as where they're going to live. And all 50 states and federal government have these sex offender notification laws. And these require local law authorities to alert the public when a sex offender has been released into the community. There's different ways that happens, either through an active model, or through a passive model. And can be active is basically where the authorities will notify the community or community representatives through bulletin boards or posters. In the passive model, information on sex offenders is made open and available for public scrutiny. So there is definitely a prevalence of the sex offender registries. In 2006, Congress passed the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act, and that established our sex offender registration. And all 50 states operate sex offender registries with data on registered sex offenders in their jurisdiction. A number of states have also devised a legal method to keep sex offenders off the streets for, if not their entire lives, then close to it. This is called civil confinement, and these laws allow corrections officials to lock up sex offenders in non-correctional facilities, such as psychiatric hospitals, after the conclusion of their prison terms. And under these laws, corrections officials can keep sexual criminals confined for an unspecified amount of time as long as they are deemed a danger to society. And that concludes this chapter. Thank you.